Hello, and a good Friday to everybody who is tuned in to this video. I am going to make a small reflection, and I'm going to share some words from Elizabeth F. Caldwell, whose book, Pause, Spending Lent with the Psalms, is a book that I have been using throughout Lent. And we have been looking at it together on Tuesday nights during our Zoom prayer time at West Acton Baptist Church. And I'm going to read a little bit of a reflection from here. And I'm going to read a little bit of the psalm that is suggested for today, which is Psalm 22, which is traditionally read during the Good Friday liturgy. And then I am going to read from the Gospel of Luke, and I'm going to read the Passion of Jesus. And that's what I'm going to share with us for Good Friday. I think it's important, even though we don't have a formal service at the church. I grew up always attending a service on Good Friday, and for me it was one of the most meaningful and special services of the year. And I think it's really important, if we are going to celebrate the joyous and wonderful news of the resurrection on Easter Sunday, it's also important for us to walk through this time with Jesus. Last night we gathered at First Baptist Church in Littleton for the commemoration of Maundy Thursday, which is the time that we recognize and remember the last night that Jesus had with his disciples and his ordinance for us to continue in the celebration of communion and the remembrance of what he has done for us. And we do that on Maundy Thursday, and then segue into Good Friday, where we remember the time that Jesus died on the cross, before we go into the joyous celebration of Sunday. And it's important, I think, for us to walk through the entirety of Holy Week and not just the party at the end. So I know it sometimes is difficult and uncomfortable and hard to sit with uncomfortable and sad feelings and remember the horrible experience of Jesus on the cross, but it's important for us to go through the whole process during this time. So I'm going to start off by reading a little bit of a reflection here from Elizabeth Caldwell. She says, "Recently I was driving from a visit with friends in Florence, Alabama, to my sister's home in Tuscaloosa, following the directions on my phone. Somewhere about 2 hours into the journey, on a back road, it dawned on me that I had lost cell phone service. I would have no idea what turn I needed to make. I tried not to panic. I was determined to focus on anything but the number of bars on my phone, and wondering if a cell phone tower would appear on the horizon. So I kept driving, hoping and praying the directions would continue and I would not be left abandoned, alone on a country road, on a Sunday morning, with no one knowing where I was. The experience of being alone or abandoned is one shared by humans at any age. A baby learning to crawl leaves the room, and a parent hears her cry and goes looking for her. She's crawled just out of sight of her parent and is crying because she suddenly realizes that she is alone. She hasn't been forgotten, but all she knows is she can't see the one who loves her. The feeling of being separated from God, whose love is merciful and abounding, is the poetic and prayerful expression of the writer of Psalm 22. As we draw near to the end of Holy Week, we arrive at Good Friday. I've always struggled with the title of this day and muse on what's good about a day in the Christian calendar when we recall the death of Jesus on a cross. A quick internet search will tell you that it's called good because the death of Jesus by the Roman state makes it possible for us to celebrate Easter and the resurrection of our Lord. Psalm 22 is read on Good Friday in congregational worship. And I am going to read a portion of that right now. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me, from the words of my groaning? O my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer. By night, but I find no rest. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our ancestors trusted. They trusted, and you delivered them. To you they cried and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not human, scorned by others and despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They sneer at me. They shake their heads. Commit your cause to the Lord. Let him deliver. Let him rescue the one in whom he delights. Yet it was you who took me from the womb. You kept me safe on my mother's breast. On you I was cast from my birth. And since my mother bore me, you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. Elizabeth Caldwell goes on to say, we live in a world where the psalmist's words of lament, written so long ago, are still ours today. The fears of the writer about bulls, dogs, and lions, and wild oxen are metaphors for forces that threaten life. They can easily be translated into the things that cause us fear today. One wonders what happened to cause the psalmist to experience such deep anguish. The voice of one who is going through the depths of grief and pain, of separation from God, who is the source of life. That is what is expressed in these verses. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within my breast. Honest, raw, difficult, and hard. This psalm yet is so deeply human, inviting our own laments. Think of the people you know who have said the words that begin this psalm. My God, why have you forsaken me? Think of the racism in our country that has allowed and continues to allow the murders of African Americans, Asians, Jews, and others in the past and today. My God, why have you forsaken me? Think of people living in abusive situations who feel as if they have no hope for ever getting out. My God, why have you forsaken me? Think of students in schools and on college campuses learning how to run and hide as gun violence increases in our country. My God, why have you forsaken me? Think of our youth and young adults whose very lives are at risk because of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. My God, why have you forsaken me? What are your laments? Take some time this day to name your loud groans. If you journal, write them down. If you enjoy walking outside, name them with your steps. If you are able to be in worship with a faith community, read this psalm before you go. When you hear it in worship, silently name the bulls, lions, dogs, and wild oxen that surround you or someone you know. I am now going to read from the Gospel of Luke, beginning at chapter 23. Then the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king." And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You have said so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no guilt in this man." But they were urgent, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all of Judea, from Galilee, even to this place." When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he heard that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him, and he was hoping to see some sign done by him. So he questioned him at some length, but he made no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. And Herod, with his soldiers, treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, arraying him in splendid clothing, he sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day, for before they had been at enmity with each other. Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man, as one who was misleading the people." And said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was misleading the people, and after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of the charges that you have set against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore punish him and release him." But they all cried out together, "Away with this man, and release us Barabbas," a man who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection started in the city, and for murder. Pilate addressed them once more, desiring to release Jesus, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" A third time he said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found in him no guilt deserving death. I will therefore punish and release him." But they were urgent, demanding with loud cries that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate decided that their demand should be granted. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for murder, for whom they had asked, but he delivered Jesus over to their will. And as they led him away, they seized one Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, and they laid on him the cross, to carry it behind Jesus. And there followed him a great multitude of the people, and of women who were mourning and lamenting for him. But turning to them, Jesus said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming when they will say, 'Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if they do these things when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?" 2 others, who were criminals, were led away to be put to death with him. And when they came to the place that is called the Skull, there they crucified him, and the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they cast lots to divide his garments. And the people stood by watching. But the rulers scoffed at him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself. If he is the Christ of God, the chosen one. The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine, and saying, If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. There was also an inscription over him that said, This is the King of the Jews. One of the criminals who were hanged railed at him, saying, Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us. But the other rebuked him, saying, Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we, indeed, justly, for we are receiving the due reward for our deeds, but this man has done nothing wrong. And he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And he said to him, Truly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. It was now the 6th hour, and there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour, while the sun's light failed, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, calling out with a loud voice, said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And having said this, he breathed his last. Now when the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God, saying, Certainly this man was innocent. And all the crowds that had assembled for this spectacle, when they saw what had taken place, returned home, beating their breasts. And all his acquaintances and the women who had followed him from Galilee stood at a distance watching these things. Now there was a man named Joseph from the Jewish town of Arimathea. He was a member of the council, a good and righteous man, who had not consented to their decisions and actions, and he was looking for the kingdom of God. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. And then he took it down and wrapped it in a linen shroud and laid Jesus in a tomb cut in stone, where no one had ever yet been laid. It was the day of preparation, and the Sabbath was beginning. The women who had come with him from Galilee followed, and saw the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments. On the Sabbath they rested according to the commandment. This is the gospel of the Lord. As you go through the rest of this Good Friday, carry this feeling with you. This feeling of loneliness, this feeling of despair that the disciples of Jesus must have been feeling, seeing their leader and beloved teacher tortured and killed. It must have seemed like things were all done, that all of their dreams and hopes had been shattered. They must have felt abandoned and terribly frightened. And Saturday was their Sabbath, And so, traditionally in the church, we have Good Friday today, and tomorrow is called Holy Saturday. I've heard it called Quiet Saturday, but a day of quiet and meditation as we wait for the miracle of Easter. So I wish you and your loved ones a peaceful and meditative time today and tomorrow. Try to keep some of this day with you, even as you go about your normal, regular weekend activities. Hold this with you as you walk through life over the next 48 hours until we come together on Sunday morning to celebrate the good news. Thank you, and may God be with you this day. Bye-bye.